Seek Outside is an American company producing lightweight, versatile tents and titanium stoves. The Big Woods Bucks team and their friends have hunted the Adirondacks with Seek Outside hot tents and have found that it is the best way to get back into the wilderness areas and have a remote hunt. With few roads and hiking trails is the only way to access the extensive backcountry of the Adirondacks, your pack needs to be as light as possible. Seek Outside's lightweight tents and stoves enable you to get back into the most remote country and hunt mature Adirondack bucks that likely have never seen a human being. Use code BWB at checkout on seekoutside.com and get 10% off your Seek Outside gear. Good luck on your remote hunt in the Big Woods.
Welcome to the Adirondack Hunt Podcast, a Big Woods Bucks production. In this podcast, the Big Woods Bucks crew from New York sits down and discusses all things hunting, and even a little fishing, within the blue line. 6 million acres of old-growth forest and few roads make the Adirondacks one of the most challenging places in the country to hunt. From Iroquois and Algonquin deer drives to the early days of Adirondack guiding to tracking with a GoPro, the team discusses the history, legends, and lore of these ancient mountains. Along the way, the team interviews top Adirondack hunters. From well-known legends to little-known local legends, homing in on what it takes to be successful in these unforgiving woods. All right, welcome back to the Big Woods Bucks Adirondacks podcast. Cut. That's not the name of the podcast.
What does it matter with you?
All right. All right, welcome back to the Adirondack Hunt Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Connor, CEO and video guy of Big Woods Bucks. With me today is
Mark Scheeren, team member.
Mark Scheeren, longtime team member.
Yep.
We got
Kevin Stone.
and we got a very special guest in the house who I'm very proud of him for being here because he is secret, and there's a reason he's pretty secret. But I'm going to embarrass him a little bit and puff him up here, but he deserves it. Quick note, we are filming in the Adirondacks. We're at my camp in Wells. We're on the banks of the Sacandaga River. We're staring out at it now, although we might as well be on the banks of the Ganges today. Feels it's about 115 degrees.
In Vietnam? Or something?
Yeah, feels
really
like Vietnam. All right. So Eddie is a really special guest, and he's not just a great hunter, which he is. He's a great hunter, but he's also very special in terms for me in my deer hunting journey, and I'm going to explain why. Eddie, we're third cousins, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So we share a great grandparents.
Yes.
Right here, move up a little bit to the mic there. There you go.
What'd they
So-
call your grandfather?
So, go ahead, Ed.
He was Blue Mountain Eddie.
Yeah, so they called him Blue Mountain Eddie, and that name still holds weight. He's deceased a few years now, right?
His 5th anniversary, I think, just came around on the 21st.
Yep. So, my family first started coming to Wells and staying at Uncle Ed's camp, which was your grandfather. No, your great-grandfather.
Great-grandfather.
Who was my mother's great uncle. And that's how my family first started coming to Wells. And there's the camp over on in Wells. It's kind of a little bit of a tear down now, right, Ed?
It's time for it to come down. You know,
Yeah.
It's seen its day.
Yeah, so Ed and I think we played when we were like kids at like the town beach and stuff. But we really reconnected in what was it, 2019 season? I'd shot my buck. I got into hunting in 2018 was the first year I took it seriously, and I shot my buck that year.
Yep.
And then we connected 2019.
Yes, sir.
And one of the things I'm going to be talking to Ed about today, which I really want to promote, as you'll see from the last episodes, we talk about the different methods. It's not just tracking. There's other good ways to get an Adirondack buck, and Eddie is like the ultimate example of that, really. You sit, right, Eddie? I mean, you primarily sit.
I will sit all day when the time comes for it.
Right.
Maybe even an hour before dark, and I'll sit till dark again.
Right.
Wow.
You know.
So I'll tell you the story about how Eddie and I first connected. I think Eddie you'd been over at the camp, the old family camp, and my mother had gone over.
Before we get into this, is the camera running?
Camera's running.
Okay,
Yeah, we
just
should
wanna
be
check.
good. And by the way, just a little mea culpa at the outset. If the audio or video is a little bit off, we're DIYing this. We're getting used to it. So
Yeah.
thank you for your patience. And hopefully we don't have to re-record this entire thing and get Ed back up here. So it was 2019. Great snow year, by the way. I mean, that was an awesome snow year.
It was cold that year too.
And I was trying to track. I was trying so hard. And I couldn't put it together. I'm still trying to put it together. And Eddie and I had connected about mid-November, and I remember being like, Eddie, it was a massive snowstorm toward the end of the season. And I was like, Ed, come to the spot where I've been tracking deer all year. Well, I got on a track, and this is how I learned a hard lesson from Eddie about the deer's movements in this area and in the Adirondacks generally. It was that I was like, oh, Eddie, you got to come to the spot. I've been tracking deer around here all season. And I got on a track, and it took me almost to town. I mean, I basically ended up almost in town. And they had been migrating, and I just didn't really understand the migration. So I had to go hunt the southern zone for the last day of what would have been the northern zone season. And it was 3 degrees in Columbia County where I was hunting. And at about noon that day, and Eddie's like, I'm going. And by the way, before I'd taken him to my spot, he's like, we got to go to this spot. We got to go to the spot. It's a deer yard. And I didn't fully understand what a deer yard was then because I was very new. He's like, we got to go to the spot. I talked him into going to this to my spot. At about noon the next day, I mean, it was 3 degrees in Columbia County, which is like the Hudson Valley. It must have been -6 up here.
Oh, yeah.
Eddie texts me around noon. He's like, I got something to show you. And it's just a massive 8.
Yeah, that was a big one.
And I'm like, oh my! I'm like, how did you do that? It was unbelievable to me, and and since then, and Eddie's going to be a little embarrassed because he's a very humble guy, but since then he's just taken bucks sitting, year after year.
Yeah.
While I've been out there just like chasing tracks around, still hunting my butt off. Eddie's always like, you got to stop, just sit your butt down, stop moving around. You're kicking him up. And just year after year, he does it. And I've tried, and it's a totally different discipline from tracking. I mean, tracking can be uncomfortable, but until you're out there sitting in 10-degree weather for all day, and Eddie was generous enough to, after I'd struggled during a season, to be like, go to my spot and just sit there. I'm like, how? He's like, just bring a big backpack full of stuff. Bring a blanket, bring whatever you need. Bring hand warmers, toe warmers, everything, and just set up and sit all day. And sure enough, I mean, I would just see deer. I didn't see anything I wanted to shoot, but it's just a totally different discipline, and it's just as difficult, and it requires just as much discipline as tracking.
Eddie, how'd you get into sitting?
It was actually a friend of my grandfather's. Actually, they were sitters, and they shot a lot of deer, and my grandfather wasn't much of a sitter, and when I got old enough, I kind of chose the sitting route.
No kidding.
Yep, and it's paid off for me ever since.
So your grandfather, who would be my mother's Uncle Ed, so was he primarily a sitter? He hunted this area, which is Wells, by the way. Although we hunt, let me edit that up. Yeah, we hunt Upper Tupper.
He hunted up here in the early season, but he was more of a southern zone hunter, and he liked to sit for an hour or two, get up, move around, sit again, another hour or two, and then get up, move around 30 minutes and go sit down again. And I mean, in the southern zone, it worked out well for him. He shot a lot of big deer that way, but he never really gave it a chance up north here when the season really got good.
So did you kind of figure out on your own your method?
I did. Over many years of chasing deer down and or not seeing them or whatever the case may be. But
so Eddie, what's the spot you sit, what is that? What's that look like?
Well, depending on the
It's
season.
in the woods.
Yeah, definitely it is. It is in the woods. It's on state land, right?
Yep.
But there is a migration trail there, and there is a local runway there as well, and you can see them on both, depending on how you sit there, and when you're there.
Yep.
So are you moving around like early season? What's your typical season look like? How many days in the Adirondacks are you hunting? And well, first of all, where do you live? You don't live in the Adirondacks, right?
No, I don't. I live in Montgomery County, so I'm not super far away. Maybe 45 minutes or so, depending on traffic. And I really try to hunt as many days as I can up here. I really don't hunt Southern Zone, even when that opens up. I don't really go down there. I stay up here, and I stick it right out to the very end of the season, no matter how much I did or didn't see. And
so are you still hunting as well? I know you do still hunt, but
yeah. So it depends. It depends on the day. It depends on the day. It depends on the conditions. I'll either still hunt all day long, or I'll sit all day long, or maybe in the early season I might try and come across the big track and maybe track something in its area and find out where and how it's moving, where it's moving, and then I'll sit and I'll wait for them later in the season, depending. So
so when you just describe a typical day of sitting, like when you're getting out there, what your gear consists of.
Yeah, are you? Do you pick a spot usually where you're on the high ground and you're looking down? Do you go high and then, like later in the day, maybe work your way down, or is it? How does that work?
It depends. It really all depends. Some areas that I hunt, you want to be up high the entire time. And then maybe you'll still hunt your way down later in the day, but my days usually start off in the dark.
Yeah.
Hours in the dark to get where I want to be. I will sit up high. I will look down, and but that's not always the case, depending on where you are.
Will you be in your spot in the dark?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
At least a half hour, if not longer, beforehand.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us about your first buck you ever shot? And I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations is run. So
yeah, we talk about sketchy things here.
Adirondacks, we're not so squeaky clean. I think it was just down the road, right, Ed?
It might have been just over the hill. It might have been. I think that very well. I'm sure this town knows very well the conditions under which I shot my first buck.
Town officials.
Yep, I'm sure. Yep, the town officials know.
I think Ed was a local legend for the wrong reasons for quite a few years, but now he's a local legend for the right reasons. So
there's a lot of people that have done that around
here.
Yeah. Kevin, looking at you, bud.
It is very, very prominent up here, right? Like,
So did your grandfather? He didn't really hunt that hard up here then. More of a Southern Zone. Public land?
He was.
Yeah.
He was a Southern Zone guy. That's where he shot. His wall hangers were down there, down across from Roman's Nose, down in Middleburg, and that's where he liked to be.
That spot's still good.
That's a great spot. I used to hunt. Yeah. Roman's Nose, that whole area down there. There's some nice bucks in there.
We were across the street, and I gotta tell you, he shot some nice ones. I've seen some nice ones hanging.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, I found out on opening day one year that I lost access to the area that I had to go in and hunt, and that was that.
Yeah.
Lost access. It was a public land, or?
It wasn't public land. It was owned by a farmer.
Yeah.
But I showed up one year, and it was fresh gate, fresh posted signs, like. Yeah.
Huh.
So.
I wonder what happened.
That's just Southern Zone.
You shot too many small bucks there. No, I'm kidding. So Eddie won't cop to this because he's too humble, but I would say you probably shot 20 big woods bucks over the years, almost one per year, and that's just what we know about.
At least.
I want you to talk, if you can, about the entire story of your. I think 2018 was your biggest ever, right?
It was.
Did you ever get that scored?
I didn't ever get it scored.
Okay.
But it was definitely my biggest buck for sure.
I would say, and I'm not great at this, but I think I might have showed you a picture at some point, Kevin. It must have been 140.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably like 130, I would say, without touching it. I mean, that's what I would put it at, but I've never touched it.
Yeah,
That's
slammer and just.
That's a huge 8-pointer.
That's a huge 8-pointer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So what was the story with that, Ed? If you can tell us the conditions of that year and everything.
I mean, it was freezing that day. It must have been, I don't know, it was probably 20 degrees. I got back there in the dark, and I don't normally see deer till 8:30 or so. And I got back there, and these two does came down, and they cut in front of me, and they probably 20 yards from me. And I happened to look to the right, and on the very top of the mountain, I saw this dark rump step behind a tree, and it just disappeared. And like something in my brain just kicked off, and was like, I knew that was my deer. And I watched it, and it went behind the tree, and you didn't see anything. And then you're watching, and just all of a sudden, it would just have appeared behind another tree, but it was only the back half of it. And it did that a few more times till it was out of sight. And then I didn't have any eyes on it for about an hour or so. And I saw other deer in that same area, but like I just knew that it wasn't them. And then after that hour or so, this thing had like worked its way down this little knoll or whatever. Came down, and it was in this swamp now. And same thing when it reappeared. It would just be behind a tree, and you would just see the back half of it.
So you haven't moved at all through this whole process. See, that's where
absolutely not.
That's where I would screw up.
I'd be
right
running
there.
at it.
Yeah. Yes.
No.
Yes. And then he'd be over here.
Yeah.
And
or you jump him, winging shells at him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I've done that too. You know, I've gotten up and I've tried to chase after deer, and been very just not successful with it.
Yeah.
And so this deer reappeared. Reappeared down in this swamp, and same thing again. You just see the back half, and after probably 20 minutes of watching it again, it came and it turned down this runway that came in within 7 yards or so of me, and that was the first time that I seen the rack on this thing, and I had to like hide back behind the tree, because I started shaking, and I'm all excited, and I had to I had to take a few minutes. I had to talk myself into it.
Yeah.
And I'm hiding behind a tree, and like there was this down tree in the way of the runway, and I heard him jump over it, and I knew he was coming, and I knew it was real. And this deer got about maybe 6 yards or so from me, broadside, had no clue I was there, walked right into the shot, and not long after, I'm standing over the biggest buck of my life.
That is such a great thing that he said about how you had to talk yourself into it, how you had to be patient, how you're freaking out, right? People ask me all the time, why do you like deer hunting? I said, you don't understand. When you see the big buck, it's the most exciting thing in your life.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't get it. I really, and my son, who just started hunting a few years ago, my youngest, he wasn't into it. He was wrestling and stuff. And then he got into it, and he goes, you know what that is, Dad? I said, what is that? Because I've never really been able to define how you get all jacked up and whacked. And it doesn't matter. I'm 54 years old. I've shot a ton of bucks, and it still happens to me. And he said, it's the constant anticipation. He goes, you're sitting there sometimes, if you collected all the hours, for maybe 40 or 50 hours of anticipation. And when it finally happens, you're a mess.
Yep.
And I was like, that is so true, And there are very few things in life that you have that kind of anticipatory reaction where you're like, I just want this so bad, because you have so little control. Ultimately, you have so little control. I think you have a lot more control tracking, but that's because I prefer tracking. You have control because you sit. You just described like the perfect sit. And I've hunted in the southern zone for most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And you just don't, I can track there, but it's hard. But you sit. And sitting, I think I've gotten more jacked up than I do tracking. More screwed up, because you have time to watch them. Like,
right, that's what I was
intense,
going to say.
man.
Bow hunting's the same thing, because
Yeah.
you get to watch the deer, coming at you and whatnot. It's the same thing, I would say.
Yep.
And that the video, I've seen it. Maybe Eddie would be generous enough to let us publish it on this podcast. But the video after he shot that, I mean, there were 2 feet of snow that year. It was 2018.
That too. Like you can see that it was in like knee deep snow.
I mean, this was you talk about hunting migration trails. This was like the most amazing like example of like persistence, staying out there, and whether that's sub-zero temperatures, 2 feet of snow, and just waiting for that perfect buck.
Yep, doesn't matter. If you want to see him, you got to be out there.
Yep.
You got to put in. Like I saw a lot of bucks that year, but that was definitely the biggest.
You waited till, was it, how close to the end of the season was it when you finally shot him?
It was the Friday before the last day.
So you let bucks pass.
Yes.
That a lot of guys would have shot.
Absolutely.
That maybe you would have shot younger.
Absolutely.
And you wait. That same year, I shot one in migration in Maine on the last hour of the last day of muzzleloader in 3 feet of snow. Hell, I was in hell.
Yep.
And the day before, it was the second to last day, I had a dead to rights, nice 6-point, but tall 6-point, probably 175-pound buck. And I literally 5 yards from me, I tracked him right up to him, and I didn't shoot. I was like, I still have a day. And I remember Bob was in camp, and he's like, are you out of your mind, dude? It's like a blizzard for 5 days, you know? It was horrendous. And I'm glad I waited, so I get that. I get that. And that was the biggest buck of my life at that time.
Well, I'll tell you, when Eddie was generous enough to, I've been so frustrated the 2022 season. I'd shot at a big buck around, where we hunt, still hunting. Very frustrating experience. And Eddie just being very generous was like, go to my spot. Oh, that's something else I want to talk to you about is how you set up, not just in terms of the terrain, but what you do. But you may or may not have shot one already. I think you shot one already. And I think you were just watching wildlife at that point later on that season. In any event, you'd seen 20 deer go by, including a 6 that you'd passed on, and you're like, go there immediately the next day. I saw 3 deer go by on that runway, no bucks.
Yep.
So I didn't shoot. So you'll let them pass. I mean, you'll let them pass till you get the right one. Yeah.
Especially when I'm sitting. When I sit, I definitely wait for one that's worth it because I'm sitting and I have that opportunity to wait. Like I have time to look at the horns and judge them and whatnot, and I can make a choice from there. Whereas, like, if I'm still hunting, the conditions are completely different. I shot a 4-pointer one year, and I was super excited because it was such an exciting hunt.
That's right.
That's
right.
And a lot of times, I think, I always say that, like, a buck jumps up in front of you, and you don't really have time to see what it is. You see a flash of bone, and you're letting loose on them.
Yeah.
When you're sitting, you have that time to assess the situation, see if it's a deer you want to shoot, definitely.
And that's where I want to actually get into that, though, where you actually sit, because Eddie gave me the pin on Onyx, where I could see his track going exactly to the spot, and he's like, go there. So I followed his track on Onyx, and I got exactly to that spot, and it was not what I was expecting, because I was expecting being up on, like, a rock with a wide open view. He's like, no, you got to go find my spot. You'll see where I was. And sure enough, I saw a gigantic maple. I mean, like 100-year-old maple with a spot where he just stood there for hours kicking out the snow and the leaves. Is that you? So, and which enabled you to see the deer as it's coming down the runway, know whether or not you want to shoot it, line up your shot perfectly when it emerges on the other side of the big maple from your point of view. And meanwhile, as it's going by, you're able to jostle around, get your shot right. So talk about that a little bit. So did you learn that from your grandfather or?
Yeah. Yep. He taught me that, it's like, it's all about being stealthy, and, he always taught me to have a big tree behind your back so that you're able to, move around and, same way, I'm able to line up the shot. I'm able to hide from them too so that they can't see me, when they're coming. Right. Because you would be amazed at how easily they can pick you up if you're sitting next to some thin tree and you're out in the wide open somewheres.
That's true.
Right. So when I first got started too, back in 2019 and trying to do Eddie's sitting technique, I would get back there and I would be soaking wet, like from having hiked 1.5 miles, 2 miles back. And he's like, you gotta bring more. So what's your typical pack look like when you're going out to sit for a whole day?
So I'll walk back in light clothing, right? Like I won't wear my coat, maybe just a thin hoodie, maybe even just a thick flannel to get back there. And then when I get back there, I'll change. I'll put all my heavy duty stuff on. I'll put the coat on. Change my gloves. I'll change my hat. I'll change everything basically. Because it will get moist back there, especially on the years when you have knee deep snow and you're trying to make it through that couple miles. So definitely extra clothes. Definitely hand warmers. It'll keep you out there. It's a big trick, and definitely a thermos.
What kind of gun do you use and scope?
So that depends on the year. Last year I had the bar in a 30-06 with had a loophole scope on it. A 3-by-9.
Yep.
And worked out well last year.
That's a great rig.
So
Boy, you can hear the.
Is that raining?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's raining.
Yeah, you can kind of hear that on here.
If you hear
No,
the,
it's
you hear
all
the
right.
white noise,
Yeah, that's.
we apologize.
But you can hear the
You
birds
guys
and
keep
everything.
talking.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Screw around a little.
What else do you use, Eddie? What other
Yeah.
gun?
Well, I got a basically I hunt with the 2 bars. One's a 270. That was my grandfather's,
That's better.
and I tell you, it's a good gun.
I have a. Oh, you shut me off, Brian.
No, I still hear you, right?
I don't know. My mic went way down. That's better. A little better. I have one in 272, Eddie. I've shot a lot of deer with. I love that caliber.
272?
Yeah, 272. No, 270.
270 as
Winchester.
well.
Yeah.
But I love that caliber. It's my favorite caliber.
I'm definitely a fan of it now. After I shot my first deer with it,
Just curious, what bullets do you shoot out of it?
I used the 150 grain Winchesters.
Yep, I'm a 150 guy out of the 272.
Yep.
Yeah, it's popular out here.
Yeah, I like that heavier bullet instead of the 130s. The 130s are really popular, but
Yep.
I really like the 150s.
Yeah.
Especially with the round nose on them.
Yep.
Yep.
So
Yep. Nice.
So, yeah, it is raining now. We'll take a second to just acknowledge that it's raining pretty hard. If you hear that, just be happy that we're at a little bit more
That we're
comfortable
getting rain.
temperature. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
Eddie,
crazy.
I have a question for you though. You're sitting in this spot, right? Are you watching your wind at all? Because that's one thing I've always tried to, like, if I sit, I've always tried to anticipate which way the deer might come from and try to be, especially bow hunting, obviously,
Yep.
early season. I mean, deer smells you ain't killing them. Maybe in the rut, you might get a dumb one. Doesn't,
Yeah.
thinking about other things. But how do you play the wind if you do at all?
I'll be honest with you. I really don't pay attention to it.
Yep.
I really
I
don't.
thought that might be what you said.
Because for the most part, when I'm out there, I wear wool, and wool doesn't carry a whole lot of scent with it.
That's true.
And from sitting and spending as much time sitting as I have, you encounter a lot of deer behavior, and that scents just sometimes you just can't get past it. I've seen them pick up my scent from my boots when I cross the trail 4 or 5 hours prior. They'll pick up on it still.
So, Ed, this is something we've talked about on the last few episodes of the podcast. We haven't gotten fully into it, but I can tell you that having spoken to Maine hunters, Vermont hunters, New Hampshire hunters, the deer don't migrate there like they do here. I mean, it's just a totally different thing. And I know late season when the snow's falling, you're sitting on those migration trails. Is that right?
Absolutely.
So, hang on. This might be too loud to even record.
We're in a wicked
Yeah,
storm.
it's torrentially coming down.
Down where I'm from, they're expecting tornadoes.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
all kinds of crazy weather. We'll give it a second.
You want to take a break for a minute?
Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Those of you who listen to the podcast will know that here at Big Woods Bucks, in the off-season, we're big into brookie fishing. If you're going to be brookie fishing in the Adirondacks, there's only one way to do it right, and that's with a lightweight canoe. Our friends at the Adirondack Canoe Company are making traditional lightweight pack canoes. Adirondack Canoe Company's canoes are the finest made canoes in the Adirondacks, the Northeast, or the country for that matter. When I go brookie fishing, I bring the Adirondack Canoe Company's Haystack canoe. The Haystack is based on the John Henry Rushton-designed Wee Lassie, which has proved to be a worthy haul over the last 150 years. Worked into the Adirondack culture of brookie fishing, this canoe is a fantastic fishing platform and light enough to carry wherever you go. So if you're in the market for a lightweight canoe, go to the Adirondack Canoe Company and check out their stuff. We'll see you out on the brookie ponds.
Hi everyone, team member Mark Scheeren here. Some of you might not know that my day job is coaching people on how to move past addictions. I've been doing this for more than 34 years now, and I absolutely love providing the most effective method for moving past addiction in the world. It's called the Solution to Addiction Workshop and the Solution to Addiction Coaching. Both of these life-changing programs are presented by me and my team here at the Freedom Model. If you're someone who wants to be free from an addiction, but you don't want to go to daily support meetings, rehabs, or be on replacement medications for the rest of your life, give us a call at 888-424-2626. Or you can go to www.thefreedommodel.org. Your first 30-minute consultation is free. Here's that number again, 888-424-2626. I look forward to helping you. Take care.
Hey, Hal here. Just wanted to tell you we're excited about our partnership with Minus 33. Minus 33 specialized in merino wool base layers for outdoor enthusiasts, from tops and bottoms to hats, socks, gloves. And our gear is going to keep you warm and comfortable no matter what adventure you're on, especially those big woods ones. We're a fifth-generation family, owned and operated, a New Hampshire woolen textile manufacturer. They have over 106 years of woolen expertise, and they started manufacturing woolen socks, the Mountain Heritage ones, in New Hampshire in 2018, with the idea that a quality product, affordable pricing, and can be worn and loved from season to season, no matter what your experience level or skill is, so no one should feel uncomfortable or ill-prepared in the outdoor community. Having a reliable gear is one of the first steps towards a lifetime of passion or whatever activity it is. And my caveat to that is you got to wear your woolies. Cotton is death.
All right, we took a quick rain break. It just came down like tropical status rain. Got a little cooler, maybe 5 degrees.
Yeah,
I'll take
definitely got cooler.
Come on up.
We'll take it. Oh, hey, Jason's here.
That's our
Jason, come on in, man.
That's our next guest.
Our next guest is here. We'll take a quick second to say hi to Jason. All right, Jason. Jason interrupted us. No, just kidding.
Are you recording?
Yeah, we're recording. So, all right, Kevin, you were saying you want to start us off? You got some questions for Ed?
Yeah, I guess first let's talk about your buck from this year because we didn't get to that yet, Eddie.
Yeah, tell us the story, Ed.
And then I got some.
I got something to add about that too. So.
I mean, I got to tell you, it was a cold day. I think it was 10, 15 degrees. It was windy. It snowed on me for hours. And this was the second buck that I saw that day. I passed on the first one. And this one also came down with the second one. Because when I shot this one, he came right to me, basically. And I shot this one. I tracked him down. I was standing over him. And then that's when I saw the third buck come down and cut across where I just walked through when I was standing with this one.
So is the last one bigger?
No, the last one was smaller. It was probably a 4-pointer.
Oh, you got lucky.
Yeah, I did. I did get lucky. Or the deer got lucky.
So we got to get a little more into the migration, I think, to fully contextualize this. In really good snow years, they migrate hard. And that's how you got that. What was it, 10, right? I think 2018 was a 10?
He was a cheap 10.
A cheap 10.
He was a cheap 10. He was.
So you're keeping an eye on the forecast for the heavy snow.
Absolutely.
Cold temperatures.
Absolutely.
And Eddie has long told me, and you can describe a little, they come down in like sections basically from the mountains. So they come down like the does and the spikes, and then you get the medium bucks.
Yep, all the does and small bucks will come down first. And then the real big ones definitely come down last if they come down.
So we had snow and then it melted that year. We had kind of early snow. Kevin and I, you and I were tracking here around Wells like
I got a video I'm going to be putting on my
mid-November.
YouTube. It was November 9th I tracked a big buck.
And there was like an inch maybe of like tracking.
Yeah, there was
snow.
like an inch of snow.
Yeah, and then we got like super wet snow.
Yep.
And then we got like some good like probably like what 6 how much snow was on the ground when you shot that?
Might have been probably 5-6 inches.
Yeah.
And then it probably snowed another maybe 2 or 3 that day on me.
So Ed, of course, he was up right away when he saw that snow falling because like people who track will be like on top of that snow to track. He's like, I got to get to my spot where that runway is while this snow is falling. Yep. Sure enough, he shot that buck there. If you want to hold it up, show it to the camera, Ed.
Yeah, it's a nice, for anyone listening, it's a pretty nice buck. What do you think that one weighed, Ed?
I think he was probably about 140.
Yeah.
Max. So you could tell he was kind of he's kind of worn down from the season. But he's a solid 140.
So that was the snow immediately basically started melting after that. So Eddie, to me, was like, you got to get up there. And at that point, I think I had to work the next couple days. And I got up there a little too late, and I ran into somebody who hunts around there. And he's like, are you I'm not going to say what color your truck is. Anyways, like, are you that color truck? I'm like, no. I'm like, I know who you're talking about, though. It's my cousin. He's like, I knew it. I saw that truck go up. I was like, I knew I had to get up there immediately. And I come up, and there's drag marks going out. I'm like, I'm like, yeah, that's my cousin. He's on top of him.
Yep.
But which was funny though, because it started melting, and I sat on that runway for 2 days, and I think I saw 2 deer, 2 does.
I believe that. If anything, you're lucky you didn't see them turn around and come back.
I saw tracks going the other way. Yeah. It'll snow super hard. They'll start migrating, and then it'll warm up. They'll go right back down. It's the craziest thing.
Yep.
Eddie, I wanted to ask you one other thing. How do you combat, like, because we have a ton of hunting pressure around here.
Yes, we do.
I consider it a ton of hunting pressure around here.
Yes, we do.
So, like, how do you, handle that when you're sitting in a, like, say a dude walks past you, or you pulling your, there's guys around doing drives, whatever. Like, what do you, how do you handle that, I guess?
I mean, it depends, because that has happened to me. A couple of seasons ago, I had that exact thing happen, and I was about 60 seconds away from shooting a 10-pointer on bare ground because of it. But it depends, like if they're depending on how they're doing their drives, I might reposition. I might try to put myself in a better location where maybe a deer sneaking away might try to get away from them, or I might even just sit there. I might depending on where they're going and how they're going, I might move my spot entirely, depending on the kind of year that it is. You know.
By the way, that clanking is my dad. He's going out to cook us burgers right now. So
it's a pretty sweet deal. So years ago, I figured out I was a little kid, and I was always the kid that was on the ground running around people's property, and it was the 70s and 80s, early 80s, and nobody cared. I didn't have a license. I didn't have a hunting license until I was like 21. Nobody cared because everybody's property was everybody's. There was no litigiousness about things. And I got good at, I would follow hunters, and I would literally, they hated me. These guys, I won't say the family names, but they absolutely hated me. And I was like probably 12 years old, all of 100 and maybe 10 pounds, and I had my double barrel shotgun. That's all I had for years. Put Foster slugs in it. Lucky they came out the barrel, right? I mean, it was so bad. And I shot so many bucks with that thing and deer in those days, and I would literally just go downwind from all these guys hunting. I'd know where they go, and I'd just go slightly downhill and back, and the deer would come running around, and I'd shoot them.
Yep.
And then they'd show up and be pissed off, and I felt awesome, and but a lot of times I don't do that with public land though. There's enough land that I'm now at the point where I go remote, and it's funny, we're talking about migration trails. I just wanted to jump in quick here. There's going to be some people out there who think there's something wrong with that, or something wrong with drives. We have a big audience. So you have to understand the culture. You have to understand that there are vast, vast places where the deer repopulate that aren't touched by man. Mm-hmm. And those deer, when they're coming down in the yards, are coming from all over the place. So, and it's not like the old days where seasons were set where there were some slaughters in yards. They adjusted the seasons. And you also have to understand that there was a time in history where there was commercial hunting here, and the deer survived just fine.
Yep.
So it's hard for me sometimes when I see a truck or two, I get freaked out, right? I get freaked out. That's just how I am. But I know it's paranoia. I know that they're the biggest buck of my life, 162 inches. I tracked that sucker, had 7 encounters with this buck. The first time I saw him was 200 yards from my car on Route 28, So, they're everywhere. And I have a theory about how they stage down. A lot of people talk about the fact that the big bucks are smart. And I'm not so sure about that. I think those big bucks, the giant ones that come last to a yard, they stage up in those hills because they're looking for that last doe that's coming down in heat.
Yep.
So they know from years and years and years, and a lot of them don't come down the migration path. They'll be 200 yards on the downwind side of that migration path, just waiting, a mile up, a half a mile up, because late season, if you want to catch, I'm going to give a tip here, but if you want to catch big bucks late season, talking after Thanksgiving, going into December, be a half a mile outside of that rim.
I agree.
Within 2 miles, actually.
I totally agree.
Yep.
Yeah, and just still hunt. You don't even have to track.
Nope.
They're there, and they'll be laid up. They'll be feeding, but they're looking for that last gal.
Yep.
And when that last gal comes down in January,
Right.
he might come down, or he'll just stay where he is.
Yep.
Because now I do think those old bucks don't like the coyotes, and the coyotes just hound down in the valleys.
In the deer yard. Yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed the last few years we've been having such good winters. I run my cameras all winter too, just learn a little bit.
Yep.
And the last few years I've been noticing there's a lot more deer lately that aren't actually coming into the yards.
That's right.
Because of the snow, the
That's right.
lack of snow.
Yeah.
I still have deer 3, 4, 5 miles in the woods all winter long.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We've
So-
had 4 good winters.
Yeah. So that's one thing that's helping us for sure.
Yeah.
Helping our deer herd.
Did you have
Yeah.
another question, Freddie? I didn't mean to jump in there.
No, that's the one I really wanted to ask him is about hunting pressure around here because I don't know if there's a place in the Adirondacks that has as much hunting pressure in the hunting culture we have around here.
It's hardcore.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear from Jason about his experiences too, because I doubt there's anywhere. We're in Wells. We make jokes about being an upper tupper. We all hunt. Eddie hunts. What
Not
upper
here.
tupper?
Upper tupper.
Not here.
No,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
really,
He's got a white like F-150.
really though, the hunting. I've hunted with a lot of people over here, and there's nobody that says the hunting culture is like anywhere else around here. I mean, it's totally different here.
Yeah.
I mean, you just don't. You go to Blue Mountain Lake, and where I've been a few times. I've been to the Eastern Adirondacks even, and you don't see the hunting camps that you do here.
No.
Where around Wells and Speculator, where it's 20 trucks.
Yep.
20-man drives on
Religiously
mountaintops.
every weekend, every day,
Every
Yep.
week. It's
dark
like
to dark.
Put it
I've
this
never
way.
seen that. I've been
Yeah.
been around a few different towns. I haven't hunted all over the Adirondacks, but I've been around a little bit here and there, and nothing like what you have here.
Where I hunt now, remote, I didn't hear a single shot or see a single person or see a single human track in the entire time I was there.
Yep.
Not a shot, not a distant shot. I'm so far back, but man, there's big bucks everywhere, so it's awesome.
Well, maybe we should talk about it. I was telling Eddie before, I was like, let's not mention that story, but maybe we ought to talk about it. Eddie, you were you got pretty close to a 10-point like 2 years ago,
I did.
and a drive came through.
That was the whole. Somebody told a fib to me.
So I have a sense of how you dealt with that mentally, but
Yep.
other people might not. I mean, you were pretty frustrated. I think you don't mind me saying, right?
Well, it depends. It's like ultimately, I made the choice to get up and leave, and it was just his day, so
That's right.
it is.
His deer.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was more meant for him. Maybe he
That's-
needed it more. I might have been frustrated for the moment, but at least I got to see the deer, and that was kind of cool for me, because I met him down at the truck.
Yeah.
And they looked excited to see me.
And you saw somebody tracking, a first-time tracker, which is pretty cool. At your spot a couple years ago.
I did.
Last year, maybe?
I did bump into I don't remember.
Which was
when
cool.
It might have
Yeah.
been in the last couple of years. It was definitely in the last 2 seasons that this guy said he was back there tracking. And he said he saw his target buck, but maybe. But I mean, I followed his tracks, and I he didn't go. He wasn't in very far.
Yeah.
He wasn't
His
even.
target buck might have been a spike hanging around town, but yeah.
Hey, if he saw a buck, he saw a buck, and that's cool. I guess that makes your day.
Yeah.
But he definitely should have went a little further in. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Let me think. We got so many stories.
Are you going to talk?
Oh, well, actually, since Kevin's here, Eddie was with me that day when we ran into Kevin when I first met Kevin. We've told the story about how Kevin and I met.
Yeah.
Eddie was there that weekend.
Yeah.
And we were just still hunting around, right? Right, Ed? Remember? We're not going to say where it was, but it was near Kevin's spot.
Oh,
You remember that day?
Yeah, I do. I do remember that day. I do remember. I remember.
It was a good day.
It was.
You
it
saw
was a
deer
good
that day,
I
right?
did see deer that day. I did. I found a lot of promising stuff that I liked, and I just didn't go back.
No, you got your
Stay
spot
outta
and you're
there.
sticking to it. Yeah, Kevin's like, all right, I got you in my scope.
I mean, hey, guys do it. I've had guys come track me in the woods to track me, like you were saying a little while ago. They track you in the woods and they see where you're at and what they're doing. So I mean, I have seen them there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I always
It-
find
it-
that weird.
It all comes down to like I try to play it in my head because I do get like you say, Mark, like I don't even know the word for it, but you see someone shoot a buck out of the area you're hunting, and it's like, dang, that was the good buck in there, you know. But it's really not. There's probably so many more that we don't even know about. And, you know, even I run trail cameras. There's so many bucks that get shot out of the areas that I hunt that I never had on camera.
Yep.
And it just comes down to their deer. You know, it's like they were lucky enough to shoot that deer, you know.
Yeah.
For a moment, you might be like, dang, you know, that could have been mine, but it's not. You know, afterward you think about it, and it's really, it just was luck that they fell into that deer, and it was their deer. You know, it was just, that's how it works. You know,
And there's a nice feeling you get. It happened to me older. Once I hit my late 40s, 50s, I just didn't care anymore because I realized that the experience was, I was going to see more bucks. You know what I mean? Once you get to a point where you see bucks a lot, then you're like, well, tomorrow I might see the biggest buck of my life, and I just don't even care anymore. But I do place myself in a position where I don't see people, but it's a lot of work.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's a lot of work.
Yep.
Going remote.
It is.
Interesting story about what you were talking about how the Adirondacks were way, way more crowded. I hope you don't mind me mentioning this story, but you ran into somebody near where you hunt who had a map going back years of all the remote camps all over that area, probably 10 different camps.
There was definitely a few different camps. All their drives, all their routes, all their sits, all their watches. I mean, you had years and years of knowledge on a map.
I mean, the 70s and 80s must have been crazy because Eddie showed me that, and I went back to one of those camps. It was about 5 miles back, and it was like constructed out of, it had totally collapsed, but you could see all the stoves, and it was constructed out of like tarps and chicken wire and stuff. And like I lifted all of it up. I got a few different relics out of it, like a cool little lamp and stuff. But boy, talk about like the difference. You know, people complain about pressure today. It must have been insane then.
Yeah,
I
I think
totally insane.
I think the forest, though, at that point, you know, the 60s, 70s, and beginning of the 80s was probably the top place in the Adirondacks, you know, the top time era, because the forest was still a little younger. You didn't have climax forest where you had these huge areas of just nothing.
Right.
You know, I call it the desert.
Right.
But you know what's interesting about a map like that is I didn't start hunting the Adirondacks till I was 36 years old. And me and Bob went together, and we had a paper map. I think Bob still has it. And we marked wherever we shot a buck, well, in the early years where he was shooting bucks, I wasn't shooting shit. But all the different places that we saw deer and bucks. And I started putting this map together, this place. And then what you figured out was how they traveled. Because the forest doesn't change that much. The only thing you had to figure out, you have to hunt enough seasons to figure out how it changes in a beech nut year, how it changes in a certain rainy year where other ferns grow better or whatever it might be. And then once you get that tabulated into it and you know where the signpost rubs are, boy, you can still hunt like crazy and narrow things down and get away from those deserts. I spent a lot of time walking places where there's no deer and not knowing like what is going on, and then bumping into a place where there was buck central and being like, oh, this is what they're talking about, you know? So for me, not growing up here, it was a decade of that, building the puzzle. You know, you guys got that as youth. I didn't get that here.
It's funny we were talking about forest composition. I mean, you know, we're in Wells. If you look at pictures from like, I think even when my mom was coming up here when she was a kid in the 60s and 70s, these were meadows.
Yes.
I mean, the whole mountainsides were meadows, and I won't give away too much, but a lot of the spots we hunt, if you look back, there's old logging roads that are going back up. This whole area was cut down completely late 19th century. So by the 60s, 70s, it must have been like a lot of like what Maine looks like now, where it's just coming back in parts where it's regrown.
That's
and
exactly
the deer herd must have just been insane. And I wonder if all those camps were there because the deer herd was just amazing.
Well,
and then when it just got climax forest, they were just like, there's not the deer there used to be.
Talk to Jim Massett. That's exactly what he describes. All those old timers, the Harts, the Massets, they were there before, during, after, and Jim will say, you know, it was have days they'd see 13, 14 bucks a day.
Right.
Yep. And then there was no coyote either.
Right.
Right. So you got no mountain lions, no coyotes. All those are gone. Right. No wolves.
Right.
And you just got the black bear and people in a forest that was feeding deer like crazy, you know, and big deer yards.
Right.
Luckily we still have good deer yards in some places.
Right.
People complain about them, but I've been in some places that there's enough feed there for everything.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Good final actually question for Eddie, because we talk about the mental game of tracking, where you have to believe you're going to catch up to that buck, but at least when you're tracking, you have the reassurance of knowing you're on the buck.
Yes.
I mean, even if you're at 10 hours behind, you know you're on a buck.
Right, you're heading towards them.
Eddie, I know for a fact, has spent days, like dawn to dusk. I imagine most days seeing nothing. How do you? That to me is the ultimate head game, and I've done it now.
I agree.
And I go
agree. That's
crazy.
Hard.
He's put me in a spot, and he's like, "Stay there." Dawn to dusk, and I've done it, but at the end I was like losing it. I'm like, I'm going insane.
Yeah. How do you have faith
So
in that?
how do you get your mental game on that?
I'll be honest, like I don't know, maybe just years of practice.
Yeah.
But
and results,
right? A lot of faith, a lot of results. Yeah, I don't know.
So you're believing in your ability to read the woods and say deer are going to come through here.
Oh, well, yeah. So I mean, in certain areas, yeah. Like I was saying earlier too. Like I might in the early season, I might get into an area, I might find buck sign and then track that area, and then I'll sit somewhere that I know that deer is going to travel through, and just in knowing that deer is in, these deer are in these areas, gives me the faith to be able to sit there and be like, okay, eventually at some point this deer is going to come by. At some point, sometime, it's going to happen if I spend enough time here.
And you spend a day there, maybe see nothing, but you're ready to go right back at it?
I've spent days. I mean, I've spent seasons, especially like when I was younger in my early 20s. And I spent seasons not seeing deer,
Yep.
Yeah.
So
that's important for people to hear. That's so important because there is a learning curve.
Absolutely.
Me and Austin talk about that. My oldest son, there's a lot of times where when you're learning, you're just in the wrong place and you don't know it. You don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
And you think these old timers are full of shit. You know what I mean? They're gonna be jacking deer or something, And then something clicks. It's like you collect enough information in your mind and things, they call it clustering. I talked about it in my book. You start figuring out that piece, and it just starts happening.
Yep.
Right.
And then you start seeing deer all the time, and it's so exciting, when that happens. So I want the listeners to know that everybody goes through that gauntlet of pain. Now some people I know just have the natural inclination and they're successful very fast. I was not one of them, and I was a woodsman as a kid, but I grew up in that farm country, so I had these preconceived ideas when I got up here, and it just wasn't the same. So I like to tell the audience all the time, don't give up. Just keep walking.
Yep.
And if you
it's the persistence that pays off. Like I said, you got to stick it right out to the last day. Doesn't matter if you didn't see anything. Like
That's
lot,
right.
like the big one I shot in 18 was basically the last couple days of the season. The one I shot in 19 was on the last day of the season.
Yeah, I've shot a lot in the last.
And even this guy last year was pretty close to the last day of the season. So you just got to stick it out.
Yep.
You got to ignore whatever bad ideas you got going on and just get out there.
That's a good tip.
And do you enjoy being out there even if you're not seeing anything?
I mean, I love it. That's why I do it.
Yeah.
So I love getting out there.
Right?
The farther back I go, the happier I come out.
Love it.
Yeah, I do. I love it.
That's awesome. All right, we got to take 5 minutes to talk about lake trout fishing. I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about it. So Blue Mountain Eddie
I'll drink my beer because I don't
yeah, you just drink, right?
Here,
So
watch
we'll
everybody here.
So we'll take a second. So Blue Mountain Eddie, your grandfather, I think he had the lake trout record. I think it was 22 pounds from Blue Mountain for a few years.
He definitely had the.
I mean, not Blue Mountain
record.
Lake, Tupper Lake.
Well, no, you know what? Hey, it. Oh yeah. Okay, all right. Well, yeah, his nickname has nothing to do.
We're
with
just
where
gonna
he caught
we're gonna confuse
You
the
know.
exactly. We're gonna just confuse
Nothing
the
to-
listeners so much.
Yeah, nothing to
yeah.
do with it. It's like in my grandmother also made the New York State Sportsman's Magazine with a lake trout that she caught from that same lake.
Yeah.
And like they both hammered huge Lakers from there, 20-plus pounders.
So if you go to Blue Mountain Lake now and you go into the marina, they got pics of Eddie's grandfather all over the wall and stuff, all his big fish. So it's a cool site to go check out. It's like an old school little marina, like kind of cool fish mounts all over the place and stuff. And there's pics of Eddie's grandfather in there. Maybe I'll throw some up on the video version. But your technique in a nutshell, in a paragraph, what is your technique for lake trout?
Slow troll and chug while you do it.
Lead core?
Yep.
So it's chugging.
Yep.
So Eddie talks about how it's like kind of a lost art. What does chugging consist of?
You're basically giving the lure more action when you're slow trolling.
Ripping the line.
Yep,
Yeah.
pretty much. Like you're basically doing like a almost like a bowling kind of movement. You bring your arm all the way back and you bring it forward, but in between there, you might do different little jerks and twerks and whatever else to give it different action. And
Jerks and twerks, ladies
yep,
and gentlemen.
jerks and
Jerks
twerks,
and twerks.
right? Jerks and twerks. Give it different jerks and twerks. And
You could film your fish.
I want to make a T-shirt of that.
Jerks and twerks. Blue
Is that a
Mountain
strip
Lake,
club?
baby.
Isn't that a strip club in
Strip club
Clifton
in
Park?
downtown Blue Mountain Lake. We're opening to that.
it might be. You never know.
I'll lift
yeah.
up the microphone for that.
But I'll tell you though, it's catching Lakers for my entire life, my grandfather's entire life, and it's a great way to fish. It's a
That's
great
cool.
way to catch them.
Yeah.
On handmade spoons.
What was your biggest ever? That was when you were a kid, the one you showed me recently? Like 33 inch or something?
Yes, yeah. So the biggest one that I personally caught was I think it was probably 32 or so out
Nice.
of Lake George. And then
Yeah.
my son topped it. I think his was every bit of probably 37, 38
One on
inch.
Cayuga?
Yeah, it was a huge,
Nice.
biggest lake trout I've ever seen.
That's
And
awesome.
he topped it. So, beautiful fish, good times,
That's awesome.
and a great way to fish.
All right, final point. Remote hunt, is that in the cards for you? I got the Seek Outside. Are we doing it this year? You coming with me?
For the remote hunt,
A remote hunt out of a Seek Outside tent. What do you think?
I'm for it. I'm definitely for it.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
All right,
absolutely.
we're gonna do it. I think Kevin's down too. Right, Kev?
I'm pushed for time this year, but I'd love to. We'll see. I don't know. But
Sounds like a yes.
yeah,
Count that as a yes.
maybe. I'd love to. I just little baby on the way next month, so that
Yeah.
kind of ties me up quick.
Bring it with
That
you.
will
Okay.
change it.
In a few years, I'll be living out there though.
Nice.
So
All right. Thank you so much for coming out, Eddie.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah.
definitely good
If
talking.
you follow
you.
Eddie's
Awesome.
white F-150, you'll see it around Upper Tupper. Just follow it. It's going to a good spot.
Yeah. I'll be up there somewhere. Well, I gotta say, I definitely thank you for having me on. It's definitely been a pleasure and definitely an honor as well. Because I am
Yeah.
just a secretive backwoods ghost in this town.
He's a
And,
ninja. He's a legend.
Yeah, and this is definitely new for me. So
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool having you on. Like I said, Eddie is one of my hunting heroes. He's taught me so much of what I know. And even though I'm back into the tracking camp. Oh, my final point, which I meant to make earlier when you were talking about runways, because people talk about how sitting on runways is like not ethical or whatever. Okay, that's fine, but your third snowfall of the year, good luck tracking. They're going to get it in a runway.
Right.
So
you're gonna be
like good
tracking
luck
them down
track.
the
I mean,
runway.
like
Yeah.
just sit your butt down on the runway. You're not gonna be able to track them on the runway because they're gonna that was my experience with Eddie that 2019 where I tracked a buck into town, 10 miles. So, it's a perfectly legitimate strategy to get a big buck.
of course.
Sit down on a runway.
especially when you are a solo hunter.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep. All
All
right.
right then. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Ed. I got to shout out Matt Dorr and his brother. I don't think I caught his brother's name at the Lake Pleasant Marina. I pulled up yesterday,
That's right.
and I had caught a nice lake trout from Lake Pleasant, and I showed him the pic, and we got talking. He's listened to the podcast. He's bought our wool, which we so appreciate. It's just amazing. I mean, we talked for 45 minutes, me and Matt, and it's awesome talking to the listeners. I mean, it just makes it all worth it because we do a lot of work on this stuff, and it's really cool to know that we're reaching people. So shout out to Matt. One more thing. Where's my phone?
I have one thing quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
If anybody does have a problem with an addiction, people know that I've been coaching people on that topic for 34 years, and I created the first non-12-step model. If you want to get over your addiction without meetings, without feeling deprived and miserable, I know how to do that. So give me a call at 888-424-2626. I actually answer that phone, or Michelle will, and we'll have a conversation for free. All right, everybody, take care.
All right, so we got questions. I think we're gonna have. I think these are good for Jason. Actually, let's shoot them to Jason. But hopefully we can get Eddie back on in the future. Thanks, Ed. Thanks for coming out, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cool. All right then. We'll see you next time on the Adirondack Hunt podcast.
All right, see you next time, folks.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to the Adirondack Hunt podcast. You can find more episodes at bigwoodsbucks.com. Check out bigwoodsbucks.com for the latest gear, including our famous American-made wool hunting jackets, wool hunting fanny packs, and wool hunting pants, along with books, tracking guides, and logo wear. See you next time.